Welcome everybody. It's episode 456 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, aka the Pod God, the Legend, the Scoring God. Joined today by the I was going to say the Jurgen Klopp of Irish MMA media, but I feel like I've hit that nerve one too many times. Well, we'll say the Jurgen Klopp of Irish MMA media. Well, you still have him, Graham McDowell. How are you? Are you good? We're on video, Graham. We're on video.
Yeah, on video, yeah. You know, you finally talked me around after, I don't know, how many attempts? Several, we'll say, attempts over the years to
many.
To do it. So hopefully we keep it up.
Yeah, probably not. We're going to do it for the next 3 pay-per-views, and we'll see how it goes in after that. But we'll have the same format, same everything. And if you're listening, just continue to listen, or if you want to move over and try the video on YouTube, it's going to be free for the next 3 pay-per-views, and we'll see where we go after that anyway. But the first pay-per-view we're going to talk about, Graham, to start off today, UFC 298, topped by Topuria versus Alexander Volkanovski, but also featuring Ireland's own Garry in the third fight from the top, and obviously a massive fight in his career. Overall, like it was a pay-per-view, in my opinion, that looked very good on paper. I wouldn't say that it was bad. I wouldn't say that it was great. It was good, I would say, and I'll take that any day of the week from the cards we usually have at the moment in mixed martial arts in the UFC, especially. I'll take a good card with good fights, well match made, any day of the week. It was one that you're stayed up till, oh God, what time was it last night? Half 6 or whatever it was, yeah. And it was worth watching. It was worth set up for. So it was
definitely. You know, when the stakes are so high and there's so much jeopardy, and there's, like, you know, as we talked about in the podcast last week, there's a main event where it's kind of a crossroads fight, a legacy fight for Volkanovski, and a kind of coming of age fight for Topuria, and all that stuff. And, you know, obviously for us, there's a bit of a more buy-in to the Garry thing because we've been following him and he's Irish and stuff like that. But even the fourth main fight, last fight of the night, Merab and Henry, has a lot on the line as well. Even, you know, going down the card, there's a few important fights. So sometimes, you know, maybe you thought it might be more exciting on paper, but when the jeopardy is there and the importance and the big fight feel and, you know, all of that stuff is there, you know, even these fights that maybe aren't as exciting or aren't as brilliant as other fights, they have much more meaning to them, and they're on an edge. And, you know, for me, I love those kind of fights. I love I like, even, you know, I know there was some boos at certain stages during the event, but for me, you know, I really enjoyed most, if not all, of the card.
100%. Like, we talk about jeopardy all the time, and it's obviously a word that's become synonymous with yourself now, Graham, over the last while. But, like, Amanda Lemos fight, like, she could very well be putting herself back in line to get back towards the title shot with that one. Like, Fluffy Hernandez has probably gone from a guy who's borderline top 15 to going towards the top 10 now. Like, Merab put himself probably in line for a title shot. Garry probably put himself within 1 fight of a title shot. You could say the same maybe for Robert Whittaker, and obviously it was a championship fight at the very top. So,
it was also Rob Whittaker. Has he still got it, you know, as well? Like, you know, has he fallen off a cliff?
Yeah,
you know.
Very true. Yeah, so there was a lot of jeopardy, and we found out a lot of stuff last night. And the biggest thing I suppose we found out was that Topuria is the elite of the elite, the best of the best, because he beat, you know, the best of the best, the pound for pound. I don't think anyone would have him lower than the pound for pound number 3 over the last 4 or 5 years, based on what he's done, Alexander Volkanovski. And he did it in an extremely forceful, undeniable sort of way. I had someone, I tweeted after the event and I said, Topuria, just too much speed and too much power. And someone replied to me and said, what are you talking about? Volkanovski was winning the fight. And what he said was true. Like, Volkanovski was winning the fight. Like, there was no doubt about that. But it also that almost made it Topuria.
I think there was a little bit of doubt about that. But I thought he won the first round.
Yeah,
but,
it was relatively close. Like, but the fact that it was relatively close, the fact that, you know, most people I'd say would say Volkanovski was winning, or, you know, was ahead or around in that fight, it made Topuria's win better because we're not looking at someone. And it will happen. I spoke to Luke Thomas about this last week and predicted it, that if Topuria would win, everyone would say Volkanovski was finished, he was over the hill and everything like that. And look, he's 35 years of age. But like, this happened with Aldo when he fought McGregor. This happened with Anderson Silva, Weidman. Now that was a little bit different. He broke the leg and everything like that. When John Jones loses, this will happen. Unless you're Habib and you sail off into the sunset, this is going to happen to absolutely everyone. But Volkanovski showed in that fight that he was well able to still fight with a guy as fast, technically good and powerful as Ilia Topuria. He showed that in that fight, and Topuria still won. That's how good Topuria is. That he shows his level.
That's probably not how the whole kind of fight situation will be remembered. It'll probably be remembered as, all this old man talk, Volk acting, dressed up as an old man and then going in there and kind of getting finished. So, even though he kind of laughed it off and played it up and made a joke of it all and went in there and was looking good, was making adjustments, was looking to kind of, frustrate, and seemed to be doing a pretty good job until, Ilia Topuria got the moment he was waiting for and took it with both hands and, put Volkanovski out. So, yeah, it's probably, not going to be remembered. It's probably going to be remembered as a devastating finish to his title reign, and it was, but he definitely showed that he still belongs at the very top level, as you were kind of hinting at there.
Yeah, let's question that for a second, because I said it very blasé there. I said Volkanovski, looked as good as he... Do you think he looked as good as he ever did? Was there any signs of slowing?
I think, considering coming back off of like a bad KO, kind of the first of your career, he looked like, we've seen guys come back and look very kind of cagey and tentative and nervous and things like that. I don't think he looked like that. I think he felt his way into the fight like he kind of... like he usually does, especially against somebody who has like the abilities that Topuria has and the kind of meta the victories that Topuria ended up getting. So, yeah, I think maybe, it's kind of a tricky situation with the age because, maybe 9 months, 10 months off, or maybe even a little longer after, near back-to-back KOs or 2 recent KOs in a row would be ideal. But, there's all this talk of being old now. If you wait that long, he's talked, like, as you said, about, not knowing what to do with himself when he doesn't have a fight lined up. So it's a tricky situation, but, it was a vicious shot he got hit with, but maybe he could have, if he hadn't taken that damage recently in the Makhachev fight, maybe he would have been able to, take that shot a little bit better and manage to survive, or, taking absolutely nothing away from Topuria. He probably would have finished him. He was on the case quickly, landing follow-up shots. But, you could say maybe that on another day before the punishment he took up at 155, maybe Alex would have been able to weather a storm there and come back, but we'll never know. But, yeah, it's a tricky one just because of the age and because everything moves so fast. To try and take 9 or 10 months off would probably piss off the UFC as well. But yeah, I think not jumping back into it is definitely what he should do. But yeah, I think he showed in this fight, I think we all knew how dangerous Ilia Topuria was. We were kind of talking, is it too early? Maybe, if they waited another year or two, he would he'd have a much better chance of winning, and that would be the kind of safe route to go. But, he's becoming a big star in Spain. He's got these like famous footballers and all this stuff tweeting about him and like, talking about him, going into the gym to meet him, all this stuff. So, it's a huge win for him. I don't want to take anything away saying about Volkanovski's chin, but I did wonder after the way he kind of Volkanovski reacted to the initial kind of finishing blow that maybe he would have taken that a little bit better, but it's really hard to know.
Here's my thoughts on it. My thoughts are kind of twofold on it. I look at the first round and what happened up until the knockout, I suppose, and I see a Volkanovski that looked like a Volkanovski that we've seen down through the years. He was throwing his jab, he was switching stances, okay, he took some leg kicks, he gave some leg kicks, and all of that was an even fight against a good guy, but he didn't look slow, he didn't look outmatched, he didn't look anything like that. The one negative part, I would say, look, the one negative part was obviously the knockout, but like, let's just question this, how did he get knocked out? So he got knocked out in a very similar way to the last fight. He got pushed up against the cage was closed off, he got hit with a massive shot, and he got knocked out. I think the biggest issue coming in, and I spoke last week, and you kind of disagreed with my points that I made, and I actually don't think the points were right. I think you were right, even though Volkanovski ended up losing. I don't think the points I made about the mental battles, the getting old, the getting knocked out hurt that much. Look, Kenny Florian made a great point. He hit him so hard with that shot it would have knocked him out anyway. It didn't make any difference. Now it might have made a little bit of difference, but I think what definitely made a difference was that split-second reaction that you would have to the cage getting cut off in a similar way, right? So the first time that he got cut off, basically, in this fight, he got knocked out. That makes you think like that. And if you think about it this way, Graham, how many times in previous fights has he been cut off? How many times have people cut off the cage in him and threw a shot and he's missed it? Why this time did he get hit straight away? Why this time did Topuria's big right hand landed? And this is a presumption by me, but I would presume, or maybe not a presumption, maybe I'll throw out my theory that there was that split second, that inch of like, shit, this is what happened to me the last time. Shit, this is how I got knocked out the last time. He's not fighting naturally. He's not moving the head at the exact same amount of, the same rate of knots that he usually would. He's not moving the feet at the same rate of knots he usually would, because he's maybe thinking of that more than he ever did before. Like, Volkanovski is excellent at getting out from the cage. He's excellent at defending off of the cage, defending in the middle, moving the feet, doing all of that. Yet he wasn't able to do it this time. Now, okay, Topuria's fast, hits hard and all of that, there's no doubt about it, but they're I would find it hard to believe that memory of what happened to you, 6-7 weeks ago, or maybe a little bit longer than that, is not still there.
It could be, or it could be, in training they were working on don't get in the situation, because Topuria has such big power, and he maybe got in that situation, was like, oh shit, better rush out of the situation, and it was kind of too late, and maybe there is something in that. But also, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm sure like Alex has been hit in at featherweight in those situations or similar situations before. But Ilia Topuria just has a different kind of power maybe than a lot of these guys, or all of these guys that Max Holloway, obviously a great striker and all, but he's not exactly loading up and throwing absolute bombs. He's kind of overwhelming you, and a lot of guys at the lower weights are kind of that style and aren't really knockout artists. So yeah, maybe it was, they'd been working on training and not getting in these situations, and it could just be, you zigged when you should have zagged and stuff like that. That is the fine margins of MMA, especially at the very high level with somebody as powerful as Ilia Topuria. You take one step where he wants you to take a step, and he's ready for it, and then he lands that one shot, and you see how devastating his power is and how quickly he pounced on it, and that's all she wrote.
There's no doubt about that. Yeah, 100%. I like the first round of the fight showed you how good he is too. Like, just looking at my notes here, you talk about the red leg on Volkanovski. You talk about the very good start for Topuria. We talk about the mid part of the first round for Topuria. It wasn't as if he just caught him with one big shot. It wasn't as if he just he cut off the cage and he knocked him out. He was doing well coming into it. Now Volk was landing a lot too, especially in kind of the second half of the round. And I've written down here maybe Volkanovski as the first round winner. So look, I think there's this tendency as well sometimes to not believe that anyone can beat someone who's really good, right? Unless it's someone who's also been proved really good. Like we know Makhachev can beat Volkanovski, or Volkanovski can beat Makhachev, because both of them are really, really good. Or maybe you could say the same of Max Holloway or other people as well. But when we see Topuria, who's 14-0, the best person he's beaten is Bryce Mitchell or whoever it might be. It's very easy to say he can't do it or he won't do it. But it may be a little bit harder to look at that skills and say he can do it. And it's also very hard for someone like him. Like, you came up with McGregor as well, Graham. Like Aldo is there. It's very hard to look at Aldo and go, I can beat him. And like, he did it. It's the same situation here for Topuria, to have that mindset to know he could do it. And what's funny to me is, right, I've seen a lot of guys look like they can do it, right? Some of them do it, some of them don't do it. And it's very rare that I see someone who looks like they can't do it and then they do it. Like, Topuria to me looked like a guy, and I picked him again. Here, this is a guy who picked him coming in. I just thought his demeanor all week. We spoke about McGregor there. He was like copying McGregor lines. There was people kind of laughing at him for being a bit cringy.
Grabbing the belt and all.
Yeah, and all of that, and walking into the cage like changing his Twitter profile to like 15 and 0 on the champion now. That turned out to be really cool. I like that as well. I like that as well. But at the same time, it's like I don't know. Is that the move? I know is that the move, right? But there was lots of other things. Just the way he was walking to the cage, and I don't know. I just didn't feel it. I didn't feel again as someone who had picked him. Patrick had like a 13 or 12 fight accumulator, I think. 12 fight accumulator, and the first 11 of them won, and he'd Volkanovski in 151-1 parlay, and I was like, oh, I think he's gonna win. I think he's gonna win, and I was like, no, he didn't. But that's mad though. I think because. I think that's happening more often now than it has ever happened before. Because I think a lot of these lads, like the best of the best, a lot of them are real tryhards. Like a lot of them are trying, like we've seen lads coming up and look at the success of McGregor had, look at the success Colby has had, or look at it, Chael Sonnen and putting on this act. So I have to put on an act too, or I have to, we've seen it with Ian Garry. We talk about Ian Garry later. I have to be disruptive. I have to put my stuff on social media. I have to get noticed. And there's some lads who are useless doing that, right? And then there's the very best of the best who are doing that. And it's a trickier waters, I think, to navigate now than it ever has been. And I
think most fans that I see anyway online are buying into all of these characters, no matter how kind of crudely put together the gimmick is. So it seems to be working, no matter how kind of rough around the edges, and people are willing to kind of fight your corner and and join the bandwagon.
Yeah, they're well, or else go against you, which is the same thing. I
suppose if they care, they care.
Yeah, I suppose. But yeah, look, for Topuria, I just think, and we talked a lot about Volkanovski. We talk maybe more about him here again in a second. But like, there's certain guys you see on the way up, and you just think this guy is a different level. And Topuria to me was that guy. I found a tweet from 2020 that I sent saying he was on Team G, and it's very, like, it is rare enough you see a guy and you think, okay, that guy is going to be a champion. There's another guy in this card we'll talk about later on who I think is going to be a champion as well. He's very young in his career, and we'll mention that in a second, but it's rare enough. But for Topuria, like, it's not a big call, I don't think, to look at a guy like Topuria 5 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it might be, and think he's a champion. I think he was that good. I think there's a tendency sometimes to look at a guy and go, oh, he's very good, he's not going to be a champion. You don't want to put your head above the parapet or whatever, but like, Topuria is just, God almighty, he moves so well. He's defensively so good. Like, his head movement last night was absolutely fantastic too. And like, it's great. I did a podcast. I don't know what podcast I was chatting. I think I was chatting with Ian or chatting with someone about it. And I was saying, look, he did this against Josh Emmett. And we kind of both agree, look, Josh Emmett, it's easier enough to do that against Josh Emmett, but can you do it against Volkanovski? Yes, yeah, he can. He can do it against Volkanovski too. And it's very hard for anyone to stop him from doing what he does. He's a tremendous fighter, isn't he?
Yeah, it's easy to kind of have all the talk about the former champion and what does it say about his legacy and all this stuff, and is he finished and is he old and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, we've been around MMA long enough, and these kind of long reigning champions like Volkanovski is an oddity. It's rare for a reason, because there's always some young, hungry guy who's training coming up, and if you're the long-standing champion, like you mentioned Aldo earlier, they're looking at you, they're training for you, they're dreaming of getting in there and studying everything. They know everything you do. Like, they're obsessed with this, and he's obviously been kind of steadily working up the quality of fighters he's had in the UFC, and taking a pretty big jump from Josh Emmett to one of the best ever in the featherweight division in Volkanovski. But I think it showed more about where he is and how good he is, that he was able to kind of be patient, be comfortable in there with Volkanovski, and wait for his moment, pick the shot, not overcommit to anything, not make any major mistakes, not let the pressure get to him. A lot of he put a lot of pressure on himself with all the things you mentioned, but there's a lot of pressure anyway, you know, coming in there. You know, if you lose that, you never know what happens in MMA. It might be a long road back to the championship, if ever. So, you know, I thought he embraced it all. I think he rose to the occasion, and you know, he landed a picture perfect finish. And you know, I want to make sure that you know it's not all talk of Volkanovski this, Volkanovski that. When somebody goes in and looks spectacular like that, and kind of you know does a huge thing for Spanish MMA, which has always been under the radar. And even I saw Sky Sports News there. It was probably the last 10 minutes of the hour, but they were talking about you know the first Spanish champion in the UFC and showing TNT Sports highlights on Sky Sports News. So you know stuff like that is always good for Irish MMA and UK MMA and European MMA. We want more. We want like you know a rising tide lifts all boats and all that stuff. So yeah, I think you know it could end up being a big moment for European MMA, nearly definitely as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, you know, Dana White was asked about the Santiago Bernabeu, and he said yes, basically. Like, so we'll see about that. We'll see about that. I'm sure, like, there's surely, like, a 15,000 seater arena in Madrid, like surely, like there's you know there has to.
Once you start talking Bernabeu and then you're like, oh, we're gonna do a 20,000, it just kind of seems kind of shoddy then, though, doesn't it?
They're putting a roof on the Bernabeu though, aren't they? Or maybe it's already on it.
They already have one. I think they can open and close it, I think, or I'm not sure. That might be one of the other Spanish stadiums, but you know I'm sure there's a stadium there. The only problem is that you know the time zones. If you're going to put a popular champion at a pay-per-view or in a pay-per-view market, or ESPN Plus going to want that? Probably not. You know, I just whenever they talk about stadiums, I just can't get excited. I just think it's not going to happen.
We'll put that one on the back burner. But as you said, very very exciting times, you know, for European MMA, for the Topuria and for MMA in general to see. You know, the next wave of guys coming on, the likes of Topuria, the likes of O'Malley and Manny Mora as well. You know, sometimes it's hard to move on from, you know, the guys. We've had to move on from Shogun and Chuck and Vanderlei and Anderson and, you know, many of them throughout the years. And
Cole Conrad.
Cole Conrad, yeah. Carl Pinter and Cole Conrad. Still the only two lads to actually retire. But, like, now it feels like we're moving on from the next generation. And look, if you weren't a bit sad, absolutely. Like, you know, when Mo Salah leaves Liverpool, you're going to be sad. Or, you know, when Roy Keane left Man United, I was sad. It happens. But then, you know, well, for Man United, no one good ever came after that. But I'm sure it'll happen for Liverpool, and it's happening for MMA, it'll happen for the UFC as well.
But it's also, you know, Volk's obviously calling for a rematch straight after. Obviously, he's just been KO'd and all that stuff. And, you know, things may change, but... You know, I'd like to see him take some time off, as I said earlier, and just, you know, make sure that it doesn't turn into a really kind of sad slide. You know, at his age, obviously, you know, he'll want to get back in there and make as much money as he can, but you also got to think about the long-term health, and, you know, getting concussed repeatedly every few months isn't ideal. And if taking a few months off can help that, then, you know, we've seen a lot of guys and a lot of coaches say they've had great results with fighters doing that. So yeah, I think rushing back into a rematch is a bad idea. I
agree. And I think if they are doing a Spanish card next, it's probably going to be around the summertime, July-ish, like when the La Liga is not on and things like that, especially if they're doing it in the Bernabeu. But we'll see on that one. So if that's, let's say it's 4 months away when Topuria was fighting in Spain, I don't think Volkanovski should be turning around that quickly, especially after turning around quickly from the last knockout. You know, I'd like to see Volkanovski maybe in the year card or something like that. Give him a good, you know, 4 months out of the cage, then a good 4 months to prepare again or something like that. That's the type of, you know, that's the type of break I think he needs, even a little bit longer, even 6 months maybe out of it. So
what you're saying is unretire Frankie Edgar and give him the title shot, is it?
Come Swanson still needs that title shot, but yeah, like it's who's going to be next? It's tough to know, I suppose, but I'm sure someone will emerge as a big fight next week, which we'll talk about in a while in the featherweight division, you know. And Max Holloway is probably the happiest man in Hawaii right now after this, because it opens right up for him again, and you know that could be a fight if he beats Justin Gaethje. I know it's up at lightweight, but he could. Do you think
he wants to go back down? You know, he's always been quite big for the weight class, and he isn't getting any younger, and he's on a lot of these weight cuts. Maybe he'll be he'd be liking camp up there for the Gaethje fight and thinking, obviously he's planning on winning. If he wins against Gaethje, thinking maybe I'll just stay here.
It depends, because like the last time he went to lightweight, it was obviously a massive struggle. He did it on relatively short notice that time against Poirier, who, he was a former featherweight Poirier, but Poirier, I think, cut a lot more weight even than Max Holloway. I wonder how much Holloway's put in this time to get the 155. I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions. I said there, like, if he wins, he could fight for the title, but maybe if he loses, he might be more likely to fight for a title and come back down. So who knows? That's, I suppose.
Well, this Yair Ortega fight obviously would be, could be a title eliminator.
Could be. It could be indeed. But I suppose we'll talk about that more when it comes around. Just a last word on Volkanovski. Again, like, as I said, turning him around, I wouldn't be massively happy with turning him around too quickly. But also, I think just everyone, let's take a breath for a moment and don't go overboard with this. Don't go overboard and go, oh, Volkanovski was never that good. If you want to say he's old, that's probably the best way to say it. Like, okay, say he's old, but don't forget how great that man was. Like, he was a great, and still is a great fighter. Just Topuria is a very good fighter as well. A very good fighter. But Volkanovski, I think
it's the way of the world now. The second you're not on top, you're useless, and that's the way it goes now.
What is it? One day you're a cock of the walk, the next day you're a feather duster. And that is actually, Graham, I've got a new fucking thing on my here we go. I'll just play it.
Sometimes these things happen in MMA.
There's a new one. Isn't that perfect? That's perfect. Hold on. There you go. No. I added a couple of new ones. So there you are. Actually, here before we move on, an announcement. This Tuesday, I believe. Let me just make sure it is Tuesday, the 20th, which is Tuesday. Yes, the first episode of the SevereMMA Mastermind is coming to YouTube, is coming to audio on Patreon or whoever it might be. Oh, this is so fun. We have recorded the first 4 episodes. So there's 8 people. Me, Graham, Ian, Harry Powell, Quilsha, Sean Dinney, Andy Stevenson, and who am I missing? Theo. Are the 8 people involved in this, where we have 4 matches to kick it off, then we will have the semi-finals, and then we will have the final. It'll be going on Tuesday the 20th, the 22nd, the Thursday, will be episode 2, then the Tuesday and Thursday afterwards will be episodes 3 and 4, and then on the 3rd week, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll have one semi-final number 2, and the finale over a 3-week period. And I'll tell you what, these games have been absolutely and utterly electric. So tune in for that. Tuesday, it's going to be 5 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday for the next 2 weeks, and then 5 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on the week after. And no spoilers here or anything, but it's been absolutely electric.
Can I give a small spoiler?
Go on.
If you like petty squabbling,
yeah. if you like petty squabbling, this is just for you.
That should be the tagline.
I don't want to say too much more about it. I think if people were to guess who'd be doing the petty squabbling between me and you, they might actually get
there's one answer to that.
They might get the wrong answer, I think, though. But we'll see about that. But yeah, tune in for that anyway. It'll be free on YouTube. And if you want to support us on Patreon, please do. Patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. We've no sponsors, you see, at the start of the video now. So if anyone wants to sponsor us too, let us know. But yeah, you can be our sponsors yourself. Throw us a $5 a month plus VAT. That'd be absolutely fantastic. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about Ian Garry next. This Ian Garry performance, right? This one we're going to take a bit of talking about, all right? Because I was watching the post-fight press conference and someone said he was listless, and Dana White got offended by that. Ian Garry got offended by that. I think it was the wrong word to use. But but I kind of understand what your man was getting at. I think everyone probably understand what the guy was getting at. And I'll put it to you this way, right? There was a criticism for Ian Garry after the Neil Magny fight, and I thought it was a massively misplaced criticism, right? He absolutely beat the brakes off him, got better and better and better throughout the fight, and almost finished him towards the end. It was only Neil Magny's toughness, really, that kept him from getting finished. And there's some people saying, oh, you can't even finish Neil Magny, while ignoring just a gargantuan, brilliant performance from Ian Garry, right? This one, maybe, if you gave the same criticism for it, look, you fought well, you did some good things, but you just didn't, you didn't step over that edge, go to the next level, take him out, make a massive statement. Yes, that would be a fair criticism of this, right? That would be a fair criticism of this one, where I don't think it was a fair criticism of the Neil Magny one. This fight went almost exactly as I predicted, to be honest. I thought Ian Garry was going to be very safe. I thought he was going to fight on the outside at the end of his jab, be very wary of the Neil Magny threat. I thought he would up it. Jeff Neal threat. I knew I was going to do that. I thought he'd up it a little bit in the third, which I think he did. The only difference I saw here, and I think Ian Garry actually said it in the post-fight press conference as well, is Jeff Neal was a lot more defensively orientated than I expected. Like, Jeff Neal doesn't really fight like that all that much. He was clinching an awful lot. He was throwing shots on the inside, but not really landing much. And you could hear his corner, say Saud, all the time, like roaring at him, shouting at him, like don't. And Ian Garry kept dapping him up. Don't be dapping him up. Punch him. Get on the inside. Be aggressive with him. And he really wasn't. And it wasn't like Jeff Neal. And look, I
think a lot of that, though, was every time not every time, but most of the times Jeff Neal tried to kind of force his way in and make something happen. He was eating those knees up the middle. At the start, he was eating the kicks up the middle, the jab. He was getting punished every time, and maybe because the crowd weren't reacting or the commentary weren't reacting to those body shots, but there was a few of those knees and a few of those kicks and a few jabs that were really nice. And, that does kind of put you in a more kind of tentative mode when every kind of way you're trying to sneak your way in is costing you. So, he definitely could have done more, especially when he had Ian pushed up against the cage. But I think he kind of knew he didn't have the beating of Ian, really. He had to make it a dirty, scrappy fight and maybe, land some punches in the dirty boxing or on the break or something like that, and, kind of steal the rounds that way. So, yeah, I think Ian, he looked a little bit tense even in the walkout, and he looked a little bit less kind of comfortable and flowy than normal, even in the fight, even though he, I actually thought he won all 3 rounds. But there was rounds were very close, and there was a case to be made for 29-28 there. But yeah, I think it was a little bit tense. You could see maybe a bit of the weight of the last few months were on Ian. Even Ian's voice in the lead up, I think there's not a hangover, but some effect still from the flu / pneumonia or something going on there. He didn't seem quite his perky self in the interviews and the way he was speaking, and then in the walkout and the fight, he seemed a little bit tense, I thought.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think, look, I spoke to him the last day and I mentioned the pneumonia, and he didn't really say much about it. And I was talking to him afterwards, and I said to him, we were kind of talking about how I think the fight would go and stuff, and I goes, just the only thing I think that could hold you back is the after effects of the pneumonia. And he goes, that won't be an issue. He's like, he basically said, look, if that was an issue, I wouldn't be fighting, which is smart, 100%. But I don't know, is that him convincing himself maybe? And I do, it's not that he slowed down. He was, going really hard in the third and all. So I don't think his cardio was massively affected, but I don't know that he have the same pop, the same oomph as he usually has. And I think a part of that was Jeff Neal in terms of Jeff Neal. I think a part of that was Jeff Neal in terms of how Ian Garry fought Jeff Neal. But a part of that was, I think, the lingering effects of just the last few months, probably the stress of the sickness, the stress of the stress and all of that. And someone said it to me this morning, oh, what do you think of Ian Garry? He wasn't great. And I was like, he won and he'll move on. And I think that is the most important part of all of this. And look, there's no one's coming out here saying, I don't think anyone's saying this is the best performance of his career. This was a game-changing career. This is massively entertaining or anything than that. It was a win at a very vital stage of his career that he can move on from. You get to the summer, you get that even more good weather, you take a bit of a holiday and you're back in against maybe someone like a Colby Covington, or you come back to Ireland or something like that. There's so many positive state coming out of this sport.
And to not perform at your best, kind of like not have the best day at the office, have things going on, and to still go out there and, you know, win comfortably enough against a guy who has wins over guys like, you know, Bilal Muhammad, Mike Perry, Ponzinibbio, Luque, you know, dangerous guy. And I think Ian showed there that he knew, you know, that Jeff Neal had dangerous power, and he had to be respectful of that. And he made himself a moving target the whole time, and frustrated, and kind of wore and Jeff Neal down that way, and kind of frustrated him, and kind of, you know, picked him apart from the outside, as you said. So, you know, not being kind of on best form and going out there, and, you know, I think nearly everybody would agree that he won the fight no matter how you scored it, you know. So going out there and doing against a dangerous guy who's ranked 8 in the division, and, you know, move to, what is he, 7-0 inside the UFC, and keep your undefeated streak. And, you know, it's a very important one to go out there and win. A lot of eyes on a lot of people wanting him to go out there and be humbled, or be knocked out, or be finished, or, you know, so people can say I told you so, and all that stuff, and all the stuff we talked about with the personal life and the flu and pneumonia. That's a lot of stuff going on, you know, for a young guy with, like, you know, important fight in front of him that leads to maybe possibly a contender fight, and, you know, a title fight in the next couple of years, all on the line. So yeah, you can see why it would affect him, and maybe I thought it wouldn't affect him because of, you know, he's dealt with adversity and that kind of thing before, behind the scenes, and looked great. But for whatever reason it was, he didn't have his best day at the office, but he still got the job done pretty clinically.
Yeah, 100%. And let's just re-examine that again for a second, because there's probably people tuning in and go, oh, you're Irish, you're giving him an easy ride, he didn't fight well, and everything like that. So why couldn't Ian Garry up the pace? Why couldn't he go to the next level? Why couldn't he take Jeff Neal out of it? I think there's a few reasons for that. I think the early goings where Ian was constantly like moving around, trying to stay away from him, I think a lot of that was to wear Jeff Neal out. That when he got to the second round to the third round, Jeff Neal would be more of maybe more of a sitting target, and he'd be able to finish him off. The biggest problem with that is that I don't think that plan envisaged what Jeff Neal would do. And what did Jeff Neal do? He did a lot of clenching. He held Ian an awful lot against the cage. A lot of that was because Ian was throwing, as Graham alluded to there, those big knees down through the middle. When you throw a knee, it gives someone the opportunity to catch you, push you against the fence, and clinch you there. And then there was, you know, there wasn't minutes of clinching, but there was like good probably 45-second bursts of clinching, which really helped someone like Jeff Neal, whose cardio is all about, is all about short-term bursts. Like when you don't have to move around and chase someone in the middle of those short-term bursts, it's going to really help you. And it did help him, I think, an awful lot going into that third. So the plan from Ian Garry was almost doomed to failure because of what Jeff Neal would do. And what I mean by doomed to failure, I mean the plan to finish. Like, his additional plan was to win the decision, obviously, but the first plan, I'd say, was because of what Jeff Neal did, and you have to give him credit for that. Ian didn't change things up enough to be able to get it out of there, and I suppose that would be a criticism for it. But, like, it's hard to change things up when you are winning the fight. Like, just to briefly go through maybe the 3 rounds, Ian was moving well, lots of clinching. I think the last minute won it for him. His mouth was bleeding in the second, and I think people kind of underestimated what Jeff actually landed as well with his jab. I think Jeff Neal's jabs were better in this fight than I've ever seen him before, and I think he knew he'd be in a jabbing battle here, and he worked on it very well, and he landed some good stuff.
I think that was about a minute or a minute and a half to go in the second round when he kind of bloodied the lip or the mouth.
Yeah,
but I think there was a couple of nice shots by Jeff Neal. Obviously, it's a fight, you're going to land a few, but I think a lot of them were when Ian was moving away. He was either backing up or circling away, and they were, you know, a lot of the shots that were reacted to by the crowd, reacted to by commentary, were kind of scruffy shots that didn't land clean or didn't land flush. But yeah, obviously he bloodied them out. That leaves something there, and you can see why the judges might put a bit more weight in that. But yeah, I think generally over the 3 rounds, I think Ian did obviously he got hit on with a few nice shots, but he did a great job of being on the end or being just out of reach or just getting clipped, but not flushly hit with the punches of Jeff Neal.
That's something I had in my notes here as well. It's a reoccurring theme in Ian Garry fights that he gets better defensively the more the fight goes. If you think about it, right, and that was it the Song Kenan fight where he got knocked down, barely took a punch for the rest of the fight, got his lip bloodied here, barely took a punch in the third round. Like, Neal was landing nothing in that third round, like, and I mean nothing. Garry was landing some good shots, but he was so much better defensively in that round. It was unbelievable. And look, part of that was Neal slowing down. I think Neal would have slowed down a lot more if there wasn't the clinching in it. So, there's a lot of positives to take away from Ian Garry in that. The negative will be he didn't get a big finish. The negative will be, he didn't light it up and steal the card and everything like that, which I think a lot of people were hoping. A lot of people were hoping he didn't as well, let's be honest. And there was a lot of negative stuff coming into that. But look, I think there's definitely more positives than negatives coming out of it anyway. Let's talk a little bit more about that, though, Graham, because there was this big thing kind of going around last week, and this has been going around for a while, that Ian is like, he's left Ireland behind and he doesn't like Ireland anymore. He was on Ariel's show there a couple of months ago, and he said he came back to Ireland for Christmas and he felt a bit uncomfortable there, and then he left early and all. I like, Irish people didn't take that well. There was a few comments about that at the time. There was the stuff this week as well, like he had no Irish media at all until he spoke to me, obviously, after the weigh-ins, and a lot of people were taking swipes at that and stuff. Now, some people said it to me about that, and my reaction to that was, okay, look, should Ian be doing Irish media? Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. I've said it before, he should be trying to get on the Late Late Show and the TV3 Evening Show and all that. But just one last point before I move on. Ian's whole thing in this was he did one interview with Ariel, and then he didn't do any more media basically until this fight week. So that was kind of his MO. I don't think, and this might sound like me being an Irish MMA shill here or whatever, right? I don't think he was ignoring Irish, and this is from someone who didn't give an interview for a good few fights. But anyway, I don't think he was ignoring Irish MMA media per se. I think he was not trying to do any media in the build-up to this fight. Before, when I say in the build-up to this fight, I mean between pulling out of the last fight and all his preparation for this. He did the Ariel interview and did nothing else.
I think he did a couple that the UFC would have wanted to do,
of course,
or TNT Sports. He did one there, and he did. But I think it's more than just this fight week or this fight camp. I think historically, even though it's a short history with Irish MMA or whatever, but historically, these fighters coming up would have had, main events in Dublin, main events in Ireland on smaller cards coming up, and they would have been, kind of hot prospects to the local hardcore Irish MMA fans. Would have been following them, feel like they're on the journey with them, maybe know somebody who trains in a gym that he trains in and things like that, and feel some kind of personal connection, and have seen him on interviews on, for example, like you said, like the Late Late or some kind of RTE interview or TV3 or Virgin Media or whatever it's called now, and people feel more attached to people. And because he moved away and had the split with the Team KF, which people maybe didn't like that, and moved to a different country, and said some things, maybe some things were taken out of context, other things where maybe he wasn't really thinking before he said them, or people took, as you said, took offense to maybe saying, oh, he left Ireland early or things like that. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to, if you're talking about like an Irish takeover and you're talking about all that stuff in the cage and you're trying to make a thing about it, people are going to get behind it if they feel that connection to you, if they feel that you're one of them, and you're somebody that has been kind of leading the charge and things like that, from bringing other people with you and all that stuff. So I think maybe people got used to what Conor did, and people aren't seeing that with Ian, seeing him take a different approach, change gyms. He's just doing it a lot differently than maybe the formula that has worked before to get the Irish people invested. I think in terms of missteps, maybe just doing interviews with Irish is definitely something that is might take 15 minutes to do an interview, and maybe Ian's or his team have got a bit of a reputation as being unreliable. You know, maybe it might be difficult to arrange an interview and things like that, and people will take umbrage with that or whatever. But I think, you know, he's a young guy. He's on this kind of roller coaster career. He's moving countries. He's moving gyms. So there's a lot going on. I don't think it's this big, like, you know, planned out thing to ignore certain media factions. Like, oh, I'm just going to ignore Irish MMA, or I'm too big for this or whatever. I think there was a quote where he said something along the lines of, "Oh, if I'm going to fight in Ireland, I hope they do it soon, because otherwise I'll be too big. I'll be too big for an Irish show." And then it just got taken out of context, and it kind of gets put with other things that maybe he said about Ireland, like you mentioned earlier, and it gets made into a bigger thing than it is. But once the narrative is kind of there, then that's the narrative. So like, it'd be probably a good thing for Ian to kind of, you know, be more open and more, you know, this is probably a selfish thing, but the Irish MMA media, you know, we're a part of them, so we're kind of speaking from inside. But I think the fans and the local Irish MMA fans like when you do things like that. They like when you know, you do interviews with guys who were interviewing you before you made it famous, and they think it's a bad thing when you don't do that. So I can see little criticisms from all the things, and, you know, when there's a couple of misquotes or out of context quotes mixed in there, it does seem like maybe a bigger thing than it is. But yeah, as I said, once the narrative started, it's going to be hard to break people's opinions. If people don't like you already, they're going to, you know, everything they find, they're going to say, "Oh, this is, I told you," you know. So he has got himself into a little bit of a mess, maybe by some of his own doing or whatever, and some kind of misfortune and things like that, and people jumping on bandwagons and all. But it's all about the fighting in the end. Like, you know, if you go out there and you win and you keep winning, and, you know, that's going to correct everything. You know, if okay, maybe there's certain things that it won't correct, but on all this kind of online stuff, this media stuff, it will just be not even mentioned in your legacy, in your history, if you go on to, you know, fulfill the potential that he thinks and a lot of people think he has. So yeah, like, I'm kind of sick of talking about all this stuff, but I do understand, you know, that this is what people want to hear about, and people are interested in this stuff. But to me, I'm more interested in what happens inside the octagon.
Yeah, I am as well. I like the stuff with, like, you know, talking about his wife and talking about all of it. Like, I have no interest in ever speaking about that. Like, and like, people probably say, "Oh, why didn't you ask him about the interview?" I would never ask someone about something like that unless it was, you know, it made sense, unless it was part of it. Never. That's nothing got to do with me. It's not got to do with anyone. That's not what SevereMMA is about. That's not what I'm about. I would just, that's not it. But like, coming back to Ireland and the Irish fans being against you possibly and all that, that is definitely part of it, and that is part of the story. I just think there has been major PR errors from Team Garry. Let's put it that way. Like, this thing he kept saying about, like, oh, I'm gonna have like the 6 fights and I need 3 more fights to get to the title from now on and all that, right? We've talked about that before. There's no need to go over it. I don't believe that, right? But anyway, right, let's say that is true and you keep saying that. And I said this to him in an interview, like, then of course you're not going to be too big for Ireland. Then of course you can afford to have one big fight in Ireland. You can afford to have a #1 contender fight on a pay-per-view card, and then, you know, go and fight for the title or whatever. Like, that's absolutely it. And even if you believe that's not true, even if you believe every fight you have to have from now on is going to be on pay-per-view because you draw numbers and all that, even if you believe that, don't say it. Don't say it. Say, I want to fight Colby Covington in Dublin, Ireland next. And then I want to fight on the McGregor card with Chandler after that, right? That's what you say. Even if the Colby fight ends up on that, even if the Colby fight ends up in Abu Dhabi or Las Vegas or wherever it might be.
And you can blame Dana.
You can blame Dana. Say it. Worry about yourself. Worry about your PR. Say, I want to... Colby Covington spoke about Ireland. Colby Covington said he was going to bury the Irish like the English did. I'm going to bring him back to Ireland. I'm going to fucking bury him. Easy. Like, you know, that's it. Even if it doesn't happen, that, and like, I think Ian would like that to happen. I think the UFC would probably like that to happen. I think the Irish fans would like that to happen. The Irish fans don't like Colby. Like, they don't. The Irish fans don't like Colby. If he beat Colby, it would be massive. Like, it would be a massive turnaround. And as well, the American fans, it doesn't look like they're going to stop booing him anytime soon. The Irish fans wouldn't boo him. If he came back and he fought Colby Covington in Ireland, them boos would quickly turn into cheers. This all makes so much sense. Like, this all makes so much sense. And the one criticism I would have for Ian is he hasn't made that clear enough, right? He made it clear to me in the interview when I asked him twice about it. But in the post-fight press conference the last day, he was like, I want to fight Colby Covington next. He didn't mention fighting him in Ireland. He's, someone asked him about coming back to Ireland. He's like, yeah, I'd love to come back to Ireland. Didn't push it hard. Didn't make a big thing of it. I'm going to say it to Dana Hunter. No, say in the press conference. Make a big thing out of it. Wear your flag. If you want to be that, if you don't want to be that, absolutely, yeah, don't do it. Like, whatever. But, like, that's the one thing I would say. Make a meal out of it. Make a meal out of it, because that's what you need to do, and that's how you go to superstardom. It really, really is. But anyway, a good performance from Ian, a good win, and he moves on. Right, we could spend 5 hours talking about everything else, so let's get it done here. Robert Whittaker and Costa. Whittaker wins the unanimous decision. An interesting fight. Whittaker was winning in round 1. Costa was landing some good stuff too. Landed a big wheel kick right at the end of the round. Whittaker in the second round had blood spattered all over his face, but Costa actually wasn't landing that much. It was actually the blood just kept getting spattered every time he hit him. Like that, Costa won that round. Whittaker won that round. And then in the third, Costa won the first half, Whittaker won the second half. I leaned towards Whittaker, but a very close fight. That first round as well, did the wheel kick towards the end of it win the round? I thought it did. What
I think it did, because Costa had landed a couple of nice shots earlier as well in the round. If it was just, if it was just that wheel kick, it probably would have went Whittaker that round. But I think he had landed enough earlier to keep it close enough that the wheel kick did put him over the edge. And Whittaker did take that wheel kick very well. So maybe on another day, it might have caused more damage, and he might have it might have been an indisputable. Sometimes a reaction, if you even if you fall or stumble kind of more than Whittaker did, then you might say, oh, that's definitely cost his round. But I can see why somebody would keep that a Whittaker round, even though that was a very flashy kick. But yeah, on my card, it did do enough to win that round for Costa. And then obviously Whittaker kind of up the pace a little bit, and Costa was sticking to his single shots and maybe didn't have the output in the second and third round that Whittaker did. And I thought Whittaker did enough clearly in the second round, and pretty clearly in the third round to win a decision there.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting fight. Like we spoke last week, and I think I spoke on the betting show this week about like whether Whittaker would be done. Basically, I thought that Whittaker in the Duplessis fight was that was a really, really, really bad performance, to be honest. And I'll be honest, I don't think this was a great performance. I do think Costa fought way better than I think he's ever fought before, to be honest.
I think because Costa's been out for a long time, and it's kind of hard to know, did he look like really good for somebody who's been out for a long time and had kind of all these problems or whatever, or did they just kind of fight at each other's level, and Whittaker didn't? Like, I'm kind of unsure where Whittaker is coming out of this and where Costa is compared to other contenders around them in the division.
Yeah, I think Whittaker is worse than he ever was. While still being a very good fighter, I don't think he's
except for in that DDP fight. Is he better than that?
Yeah, I think he's better than that, but he's also fighting a lad who's much worse than he did DDP, I think, which is, kind of goes to your point there, like where are both of them, I suppose, type of thing. But I do think the middleweight division is so bad, like you can never rule anyone out, I suppose. But it's funny as well when Fluffy Hernandez won, Joe Rogan was like, how stacked is this division? It's fucking terrible. It's fucking terrible. But yeah, a good win for Robert Whittaker there. Also, just before we move on,
although for the middleweight division, it is quite stacked.
Yeah,
for
the middleweight division.
For the middleweight division,
relatively. TNT Sports was so bad.
Yeah, I meant to mention this during the Ian Garry fight. Yeah. I actually watched it back afterwards with like Russian commentary, and there was none of these problems. So I don't know what was going on. The commentary kept disappearing, and it was just crowd noise. And I don't even know if it was live crowd noise or if it was like canned crowd noise or what was going on. And then it actually, like, I don't know if it was just me, but at the start of, I think it was the second round, it like froze for a few seconds.
It did, yeah. No, it did
and
for me.
It came back on with no audio whatsoever for a few seconds, and it was just, oh, what is going on here?
Yeah, so like I didn't really like scoring that second round because I missed fucking 15 seconds of it or something. You don't know what could happen there, but yeah, and like it wasn't. I don't think it was people cursing and they were dubbing over it or whatever.
I couldn't hear it. I was kind of listening out to when I was watching it in the Russian commentary afterwards. I was like trying to listen to see if there was any like really bad words shouted or anything that were really audible or anything, and I couldn't hear anything. So I don't know.
It's bizarre as well. Like I was watching a Man United match today, and one of the Man United players dived or something, and someone just roared like, "You're a fucking wanker!" Like, and it was on TV, right? And then they apologized for it afterwards. Why don't they do that on the UFC? Like, why is this 10-second blurred delay on the UFC for bad words at 4 o'clock in the morning, but fucking 5 o'clock in the day in the Man United match they don't do it? I don't know. I just think it's bizarre. But yeah, like BT Sports for years have been bad. TNT Sports, I don't know. I don't know how they keep making disasters out of these things. I understand. Okay, they have to blur out words or whatever when it comes to the main events and all of that, but. This was ridiculous.
Well, do they have to really? Like, we're watching cage fighting at like fucking 3, 4 in the morning. What time was Ian Garry fight? 2 in the morning. 3 in the morning. Come on. Like.
Awful, but the commentary then as well. I thought the commentary was really good. Like the absence didn't make the heart to grow fonder here. Cormier being out was definitely a plus here. I thought Bisping
towards the end, like there was like a minute and a half to go in the third round, and you could make an argument that round was a vital round in the Ian Garry Jeff Neal fight, and with about a minute or minute and a half to go, Joe Rogan starts talking about other things and starts talking about Leon Edwards versus Ian Garry and stuff. It's just like, can we not just talk about what's happening in the fight for the moment, and then when the fight's over, we can talk about other.
There was a bit of that, but there's always going to be a bit of that. But I think like Bisping himself shot that down more than Cormier obviously ever would. Anik has to do it sometimes when it gets insane, but. Like I thought it was significantly better than when Cormier is there, like miles and miles and miles better than when Cormier. Like this should be.
Yeah, well, that's not much of a.
No, it's not. But this should be the pay-per-view trio, I think, going forward. And some people are saying, "Oh, Felder, Sanko." And all. Yeah, I would agree. Like I think Sanko in the future, but give her another few years, like, and maybe when Rogan goes or whatever. And I think Felder could be in there as well. But it like. If you can't watch that and see how much better it is without Cormier, I think it's insane. It was just so much better, so much easier to watch without Cormier there. It was unbelievable. But anyway,
were you not like oddly kind of curious about what kind of nonsense he would have been saying during Henry Cejudo?
Not in any way. Not in any way was I ever curious about
morbidly curious.
No, I wasn't. Let's talk about Merab and Henry, though. Look at it, a very interesting fight. Henry looked good in the first round. I thought he kind of rocked him early. Merab landed an elbow. Merab got a takedown. Henry got up. Henry landed on top. And Henry was able to control Merab in a way that Merab wasn't able to control Henry. And I was thinking at that stage, like, oh shit, this is about to get interesting. And Merab wasn't going for all the millions of takedowns. He was throwing wheel kicks and all of that. But at the start of the second round, Henry Cejudo looked so tired. And I think it was more a mental thing than anything else, because Merab wasn't pushing this massive pace that he usually does whatsoever.
Well, I think Henry had been doing a pace that he's not used to in that first round, maybe thinking, oh, this is 3 rounds, not 5 rounds. I can go a little bit harder. And in order to kind of get the positions, he had to work maybe a little bit harder than he would have expected. And yeah, he seemed, as you said, especially like halfway through the second round, he looked like he was on his last legs already.
Yeah, he did. Merab landed a big combo in the middle, landed a big left hand and got a takedown. Henry Cejudo just went over and grabbed the cage to get up, as clear as you would ever see. But Merab won that round, but he wasn't scoring much. This is going to be a thing with Merab in the future. He's going to lose a big fight because he doesn't score that much. Pulling a guy to the ground and not landing any shots is not going to do it in a fight. It's going to do it against most guys, right? Was not going to do it in every fight, but the third round was all Merab, loads of clinching. He did land some hard shots in the mid-round. Picked Henry up like Hughes versus Trigg, and Frank Trigg was there refereeing as well. Not in that fight, unfortunately, but Henry just the cardio issues here for Henry more than anything. If Henry could have fought in the second and third round how he fought in the first round, I think he had to win in this fight. I really do, but that cardio is an absolute weapon for Merab. Henry at this stage of his career, I think, just doesn't have it, and it was a good win for Merab, who moves on and will surely fight for the title next.
It was nice the way he lifted him up and brought him across the cage, and threw him down. That was a real kind of demoralizing. If Henry was kind of getting any notions of gathering a second wind or a third wind, and making a last kind of go at it, that was kind of that. You're not going to win today, Henry.
Yeah, son. And then he went over talking to fucking Mark Zuckerberg as he was choking Henry and stuff as well.
And the commentary are very excited about that as well. I don't know.
Very excited. Because Zuckerberg was in the corner of Volkanovski as well, which is like, yeah, a bit odd. And like, when you do things like that, it's all well and good, but then you lose and get knocked out, and it's like, well, maybe you should have had an actual corner.
You're blaming Mark Zuckerberg's bad corner.
I am, yeah.
For the knockout.
I'm also blaming Adesanya and Volkanovski. Both are like the prime athletes, so both of them now have been beaten and are no longer champions.
No Steven Seagal anyway.
No Steven Seagal. There you go. Okay, after that, Fluffy Hernandez. Like, Fluffy does what Fluffy does, doesn't he? Like, Kopylov looked good. He was throwing some shots. I was I texted Ian, go, I immediately regret picking Fluffy, but he turned it around. And do you know what he did, Graham? What we've been talking about ad nauseum on this podcast. Takedown 1 doesn't work. Go for takedown 2. Takedown 2 doesn't work. Go for takedown 3. Takedown 3 doesn't work. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He eventually got one. He wore him down. He got another one. Wore him down. Got another one. Choked him out. This is what we talk about all the time, isn't it? Fluffy. I feel like Fluffy Hernandez should be like the SevereMMA podcast fucking banner fighter or something. Like, if we had like a silhouette of a background, it should be Fluffy Hernandez. He just fights how we want to fight, and he's brilliant.
Yeah, it was didn't have it all his own way. Toughed it out, made it difficult for his opponent. As you said, just wore on him, made it a bit scruffy, and got it to where he wanted it. Kopylov, he started off well, but once it started, once he got taken down that first time, it did seem to take more out of him than maybe you would expect. I think part of it maybe was a bit of a mental thing, and feeling the difference in ability on the ground. And I think, it seemed inevitable that Fluffy was going to get the finish as it went on, and that's what happened. So it all kind of fell apart for Kopylov very quickly, but that was because of the kind of the pressure and the grind that Anthony Hernandez put on him.
Kopylov did take it on short notice as well. When I say short notice, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks, so not as short as normal. But when you're fighting a guy like Fluffy, or say like a guy like Merab, 3 or 4 weeks not going to cut it. You need to be in proper shape. But great win for Fluffy again, who moves forward. Amanda Lemos then beat Mackenzie Dern. This fight should have been stopped in the second round without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, Amanda Lemos, though, she could have. I don't know. She kept engaging and grappling, and I don't know. I think she could have finished Mackenzie Dern a few times if you had have forced her back up to the feet, especially. I think it was the last time she dropped Dern, was it? Or one of the last times she dropped her, and Dern kind of delayed reaction and dropped, holding her face to her back. And if you just kind of force her to get back up and land a couple more strikes there, or she mightn't even be able to get back up there. So I think there was some bad fight IQ going on from Amanda Lemos at times, but she was just a much more well-rounded fighter than Dern. Her Dern striking is just not good.
It's weird though, because Dern actually hits really hard, and she hurt her, I think, at one stage in maybe the first round it was. But like,
they're kind of just haymakers, hoping for the best, though. Yeah.
But still, like, if you could, if a coach could fucking crop her into a striker who just throws that big right hand and throws fucking nothing else except is like properly defensive, just stand in a defensive shell with a right hand and then hope the fight gets to the ground where you're really good. Just I think Mackenzie Dern, instead of adding stuff, she thinks that she needs to take things away to become a better fighter, because she's as tough as fuck. We saw it in the third round. She came back. She won the third round. Like, she did very well in the third round, and she came out of it with I think more praise than she normally would have in a fight that should have been stopped. Again, I'll say it in that second round. But Lemos moves on with the win there. Marcus Rogero de Lima then fought Junior Tafa. He was supposed to fight Justin Tafa, but Justin Tafa fell out with a leg injury. Then he kicks the leg off.
He gave his brother a leg
Tafa.
injury pretty sharpish.
Yeah, so they're going home with 2 legs between them. Back to Australia or New Zealand or wherever they're from. But a good performance from him. Just basically kicked the leg off him. He went for a takedown at one stage during this fight, and everyone online was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe he's going for a takedown." But in the end, I think it was probably a good decision. The second takedown he got was good, and it finished the fight. So fair play to him there. And here's the guy, Graham, who I think is the future UFC champion, Rinya Nakamura, 9-0. This guy he mightn't have shown it last night necessarily, right? If you're only watching him for the first time. This guy is a fucking beast. Like he went to the ground just all night with Carlos Vera, who is a Ryan Hall trained leg lock artist, and he's like, "Oh, are you? Well, grand. I'm just going to wrestle and do jiu-jitsu with you for the whole fight, even though I'm a really good striker and all." And he just did it and won comprehensively. To be honest, I love this guy. I think he's a future champion. What do you think?
Like he definitely has a lot of potential, but I think this is a hard fight. It wasn't that impressed to go out and say, "Oh, this guy's going to be a future world champion from this fight." You know, this is Carlos Vera is obviously a guy who was on the most recent Tough and kind of got dominated by Brad Katona and knocked out of that tournament. So he's definitely like, you know, not the best the UFC have to offer, and there'll definitely be tougher tests for Nakamura, but he's definitely one to watch. But I'm going to need a bit more, a few more known quantities in the UFC before I jump on he's going to be a future champion bandwagon.
Pussy. He's gonna be a champion. I Team Sheehan right now. He's my next Topuria. And Rinya Nakamura, I remember the name. We Yang Zhang then got a big knockout with punches and hammer fists against Bredson or Ribeiro. That was nice. Danny Barlow beat Josh Quinlan. The best part about this is I just tweeted "take that" jokes throughout the whole fight, and then one got on the TV, which was absolutely fantastic. I got 3 "take that" puns on ESPN, so that was absolutely fantastic. Opening the card in was Miranda Maverick against Andrea Lee. An even enough fight, but Maverick definitely deserved it. And then Oban Elliott, the Welsh gangster, beat Val Woodburn via decision. Before we get into the fight, Oban Elliott wins this week's Fair Play Award. Look, fair play to Oban Elliott.
Fair play to you. Award
fair play. He said fair play in the post-fight interview. So that alone wins him the Fair Play Award, right? But he also like...
It's that easy for the fighters. Just shout out fair play in the octagon. And
fair play.
You're a winner.
Fair play. But like, for everything he's come through in his life, you know, from his father passing away to not being able to train to, you know, sticking at it, coming through cage wires, losses and everything like that. You know, I have an awful soft spot for Oban. Everyone knows that. And it was beautiful to see him on that stage to win, and absolutely fair play to him. The fight itself, there was a lot of criticism of this fight, right? It's like, oh, it's low level and everything like that. It wasn't the best fight in the world. It wasn't the best performance, I don't think, from either lad. But I think what this fight showed for Oban was that, like, through all the UFC jitters on a pay-per-view card, he can still come through against a guy who hits really, really hard, and did hit him really, really, really hard in that opening round as well. I think he showed his all-around game. I think he showed what he can do at this level. But I also think, like, if you're watching Oban Elliott, like I've watched all of his fights, he's a guy I really think who's 12 fights into his career now. It's going to be 20 fights into his career before I think you start to see the real Oban Elliott. I really do. I still think he's very young in the game. He's a lot of improvement to do, and I believe he can improve an awful lot. Like I feel like we don't see enough of Oban's hands sometimes. He can wrestle, he can do it all, but when he puts it together, I think it's going to be really good. I think the opening up of those hands in future is going to be a big improvement in his game when he can do it confidently with putting all parts of the game together. We saw glimpses of it last night. There's no one coming out saying this was fucking the next Conor McGregor or this is the next world champion, and by the way he's fighting right now. But there's definitely sparks of it, and I was impressed by the performance, and I'm delighted for him. Graham, what did you think of it?
Yeah, you know, Woodburn came out there, was game, like took a big head kick and fired back, and, you know, had the best moments of the fight for him straight after that. And, you know, he showed good heart himself as well. He was kind of worn down by the end of the fight by Oban, but didn't give up, kept in there. But for, bar that kind of 20 seconds or maybe even less, I thought Oban was in control. Nothing spectacular, as you said, and not really a fight to remember in terms of the second round and the third round. But Oban showed again what we talked about last week in previewing this fight, that he's willing to go out in his shield. He'll fight till the bitter end. He'll be taken out of there on a stretcher, all those things, and that he really, really wants this. He goes in there and he wants to bite down the mouthpiece and outgrind you and just kind of make it a battle of wills. And obviously for the for the longevity of your career, you can't be getting rocked heavily in every fight, but it is exciting when you have these moments in fights and a guy nearly gets rocked and he comes back and wins. But so yeah, when people were saying, or you were saying, people were saying that it was maybe a bit boring, I didn't find that, but obviously I'm a bit more invested in Oban's story throughout the years than maybe the average fan. But for me, it was a really good UFC debut, because we've seen, this is guys like Oban Elliott's dream, and when they get there, sometimes it can all be a bit too much, or the jitters can take there, and you can end up maybe losing a fight to a guy that maybe on another day or you could or should beat. So he's gone in there, got that out of the way. He's won inside the UFC. He can kind of get his feet under the table a bit more and maybe be a bit more comfortable there. Go back and maybe work on a few things in his game to maybe not have to face adversity so often. Not so often in his last couple of fights, but yeah, it's exciting for the fans, my opinion, when a fighter's like this. But for Oban and kind of fulfilling his potential, that's maybe something that he has to go back and kind of be careful with.
Yeah, 100%. No doubt about that at all. But I think that will come too. I'm really excited about it. For Val Woodburn, I think Val Woodburn versus Kiefer Crosby would be a great fight. Can we get that? Can we make that happen? I think that'd make a lot of sense. Someone's getting knocked out in that one anyway. There'll be bombs flowing in that one. So let's make it happen.
How long is Kiefer out for?
I'm not sure actually. What was the injury again?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it could be out a while, but yeah, maybe not. But I think I'd like to see that fight. Anyway, speaking of Irish MMA, there was a big Cage Legacy card on this weekend. Obviously, the lads in the L Triangle will talk majorly about that, but there was a big win for Richie Smullen in the main event, who's obviously looking for another big fight in the UFC or one of the major promotions. I think he'd be a great candidate for that. Maybe even a Contender Series or something like that. The 2023 Irish Amateur of the Year as well, Conor McCarthy, got a very nice win on that as well, and he's definitely one to watch. He's a Peter Queally protege, and he looks unbelievable. He looks really, really, really good, and there's a great, an amount of people coming through. Max Sally, I think, is fighting in a couple of weeks as well. Tiernan Loughran is fighting, who's Kanan Loughran's brother as well. And I know the lads had Emer Darcy there on the podcast a couple of weeks back as well. So there's a lot of good young Irish amateurs coming through at the moment, and new pros even. So a very exciting time. A couple of other notes on Irish MMA. Henry Felipe was fighting at the weekend. He ended up losing over in KSW, but he's been on a great run over there, so I'm sure they'll have him back on there again.
I saw that. Yeah, he was looking good on the feet. Maybe he got a little bit too comfortable, got hit with a big shot, and his opponent followed up well. Didn't give him the chance to recover, and it was a nice finish. But maybe it was one that Felipe, you probably expect him to if the fight was to stay on the feet, for him to win that fight. But it seemed to me like maybe he got hit with a shot he didn't see, and that's how quickly fights can change. But I think it's a disappointing one, because he seemed to have the better of it on the feet up until he got cracked. Yeah,
definitely. And it's a lot of tough fights out there as well in KSW, and he's won a good share of them. So fair play to Henry. Always does good stuff. There's a lot of fights announced as well for the Bellator Belfast card. Obviously, we spoke a couple of weeks ago about Corey Anderson versus Karen Moore and Liam McCord versus Sinead Kavanagh, but Fabian Edwards versus Aaron Jeffrey. Also announced James Gallagher is coming back. He's going to be fighting Jeremy Kennedy, Tim Wilde, Manuel Souza. Kieran Clark is fighting.
Before you go on there, what do you think of the James Gallagher and Jeremy Kennedy? It's a bit of a, out of left field one.
It
different
is.
Weight class and.
Well, James went up to 145 in his last fight. I think he does want to go to 145. All right. Very tough fight.
A quick kind of ascension to the top contender of the division.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of that fight. I'll be honest with you. I think it's a really tough fight for James. But look, what's Jeremy? Jeremy's a takedown artist. He's a very good wrestler and all of that. And we know what James is good at. James loves to be on the ground. He's very good submission. So I say he'll fancy himself to get the submission there. It's a brave call by James Gallagher to take that fight. As I said, it's a very, very tough fight. I'm not sure it's the one I would have made, especially if you were trying to please the Belfast crowd or whatever. But it's a good fight though. Like it's James has been looking for a big fight for years now. Jeremy Kennedy obviously isn't getting the title shot next, so he's looking for one more fight. So there you go. With Kieran Clark
definitely a big opportunity.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big opportunity for James.
Massive. I hate this Kieran Clark versus Darius Maffey fight. Like I haven't even looked at Maffey yet, but he's 4-1. Like Kieran Clark is 8-0. Like also like what's going on with PFL and the European series and all that? Like why is Kieran Clark not in that? Like why are some of the fighters they sign not in it? They're just getting these random lads to be in the European series, like, and then putting in the champion from last year back into the European series. I don't know. It's
a bit overwhelmed with the. I was expecting more from the PFL tournament announcements and things, the European tournament announcements and things like that. I'm underwhelmed so far, but maybe there's a bit of ignorance on some of the fighters on my part. But I was expecting maybe with the merger a few kind of more exciting, big, well-known quantities being put into these tournaments.
Yeah, and like, where are they going to put all these fighters? Like, you have loads of fighters to stack that. I don't know. I just think it's all a bit bizarre. But anyway, Tafiq Musayev and Alfie Davis, Nathan Kelly also has a fight in this against Vikash Singh, and then Abraham Babli against Isaiah Pinson. I'll be honest, not a blowaway card so far. The top 2 fights are very, very good. Top 4 fights are good, to be honest. I'm not going to complain about it too much. But Belfast, I'm going to Belfast for it. Belfast, we give it out again. Next week, then. The UFC card is Brandon Moreno against Brandon Royval. I had another Irish MMA thing to talk about as well, and I can't remember, but he'll come to me. Big fight for that flyweight division there between Moreno and Royval. Probably going to, see a number 1 contender in that after the, Albazi obviously fell out. He was supposed to fight Moreno here. If he would have won, I think he was the genuine number 1 contender. The two of these lads obviously have had their goals at it. The same could be said for Rodriguez and Ortega in the exact same way they've had their goals as well, but it still could be the number 1 contender, especially with a new champion there after that. How do you see it
going? I was going to say Volk losing kind of adds a new kind of wrinkle to this fight, and maybe you never know with the UFC, Dana White and all that, and the matchmakers, what's going to happen. But you'd have to think that this is a good chance for one guy to go in, look impressive, get a finish over the other guy, and kind of put himself on the lips. And with the cards coming so close together, the timing's kind of lined up nicely. So I think this is a big opportunity for Yair and Ortega to go in there and make a statement and kind of put themselves in the frame for getting the next title shot.
Indeed, and this is very much like that Bellator Belfast card we just talked about. There's a lot of locals on this one. A lot of Mexican Americans and a lot of Mexicans themselves. El Huber is on it. Manuel Torres, Christian Quinones, Jesus Aguilar. I'll be honest, I don't see anything massively stand out apart from the top 2. I do like Mohamed Naimov. He's fighting against Eric Silva. I think he'll win that fight handily enough, but I do really like him. But, Zell Huber's a good prospect. He's fighting Francisco Prado, but, not a massive card. What is a massive card, though, is the Bellator versus PFL card, which goes down next week on the 24th. The only problem with this one, I think, is had a lot of pullouts. Most recently, Patricio Pitbull fight is not happening. The Magomed Kerma versus Jason Jackson fight obviously fell out as well, which, you could argue those are the two best fights on the card. Very unfortunate. What we are left with is Fahey against Bader, Kasanganay against Eblin, Ray Cooper against Jason Jackson, Bruno Capoloza against Nimkov, Thiago Santos against Romero, Collard versus AJ McKee, Braga against Pico, and then the rest as we go down through it. Alio Baggio Walsh is on the card, as is Clarissa Shields. Myself and Ian actually have a full preview of this already recorded. It's going to be coming out on Patreon on Thursday. I think it'll be out this week.
Yeah.
What's your standout in that card, Graham? It's like
I think in fairness to them, it's MMA. I think we even said this when they were buying PF, or when PFL were buying Bellator, that you try to put these fights together, but MMA, as that new sound clip that you have there says,
sometimes these things happen in MMA.
yeah, so you try to put these things together and make everybody available on the same card to do these things, and we've seen over the years in MMA it's very difficult to do. They've got Jason Jackson a new opponent. They've done their best to kind of repair the card, but it's definitely not the same as as they planned it out, as they drew it up. But yeah, I'm still intrigued for some of the matchups. That Yo Romero matchup is interesting.
It's going to be
the Ryan Bader,
Romero Santos is going to be the biggest snooze fest of all time. The two of them going to be looking at each other for 15 minutes. Going to be terrible.
Or somebody's going to get knocked out badly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. It's not ideal, but when they've tried to put on a different card and for various reasons and injuries and all that stuff, it's kind of falling apart. You're always kind of left scrambling, and they've done a decent job of patching it up, as I say, but it's definitely not the huge splash on paper that they would have been hoping to make.
I think there's too many clear winners in this. Like I think Kasanganay Eblin will be a good fight, but I think Eblin the clear winner. I think Cooper and Jackson could be a good fight, but I think Jackson's the clear winner. I think Capoloza and Nimkov could be a good fight, but again, I think Nimkov is just going to be too good for Capoloza. I don't think, Romero Santos, that could go a lot of different ways. Collard McKee, again, I think that'll be a very good fight, but it'd be hard to see McKee not winning that. Same with Pico. Although Pico and Braga, that's probably the best fight out of all of them, although I do think Pico will win as well.
What about Bader and Ferreira?
Bader and Ferreira is an interesting one, because Bader's biggest struggles over the last few years have been at light heavyweight, where he's definitely slowed down, definitely got older, but at heavyweight that hasn't really been a struggle. Now he's fighting a heavyweight who hits really hard. He's 6'8", 6'9", and he moves really quick as well. Like, he moves like a light heavyweight. I just wonder if that's going to be an issue. Also, I just wonder if Bader will go right across the cage and take him down. And I think that could solve all these issues very, very quickly. So,
and they're definitely not going to promote this as who's going to face Francis Ngannou fight. They're just going to be like, these two guys are bums, and we can't possibly put these guys against Francis Ngannou.
There was a bit of that. But like, I don't know. This card is happening in 6 days. I've heard nothing about it, basically. Like, is there any promotion on this card?
At least pretend like they might, fight Francis Ngannou at some stage. Get people talking a little bit. Like.
The whole card. This is the biggest card that they can put on. Like, this is a massive card. But like, heard very little about it so far. I'm sure there'll be more build up. We're obviously at the start of the week. They probably were waiting for the UFC to get over and done with. But yeah, look.
Now that UFC 300 announcement is finally over, all the YouTube channels can focus on something else now.
What about that though? Obviously, it was announced that Jamal Hill is fighting Alex Pereira. UFC 300.
Out of nowhere, they totally don't redeem themselves.
Jamal Hill said he only found out about it yesterday.
Yeah, did he not just get like surgery on something important?
Achilles, Achilles. Yeah, but that was a good while ago now. I think he is coming back.
An Achilles injury. Is that not like extremely serious?
Yeah, it's like the worst injury.
Short notice. Definitely underwhelming. For all the talk, all the guesswork, all the Dana White. You guys are gonna. You're gonna love this and all, and then it drags on, and then it's kind of even if
it's a good fight,
if Jamal Hill wasn't coming back off this injury, how in shape is he? I saw a photo recently, I think it was recently, of him having blown up, and he's definitely, like, we've talked for years, especially you, about how good Jamal Hill is, and you called him to be a champion in one of your bold predictions many years ago, and all that, and I definitely have a lot of respect for his skills, but it's just such a big ask to come in after an injury, get back in shape, short notice take on Alex Pereira. It's just not ideal in terms of that, and it's not the big exciting matchup that I think most people were expecting to headline UFC 300. But it's for so many reasons that I think the UFC seem to think that 300 is going to sell itself anyway. You don't want to stack it too much and then not have high caliber main events for other cards, and you don't want to give pay-per-view points to champions who maybe won't be contributing to the actual number of pay-per-view buys too much. You don't want to be giving them their percentage and things like that. There's definitely a lot of things going on, but for an historic 300 card, I think people were rightly expecting maybe a bigger main event.
100%. I definitely think so. Like, Ariel reported a couple of weeks ago that they were trying to do Chimaev, and obviously Chimaev, there's how would you say it? There's rumors that he can't get into the country.
It's a visa issues,
but like he's been hanging around with fucking Kadyrov for years, and aren't people like connected with Russia and Kadyrov banned from the same with the Kinahans, and the Furies can't get into America. That's the talk of it anyway, and. Yeah, so like I don't know, maybe they could get they were trying to get that signed off or whatever. It didn't happen. Look, if Trump was in office, it'd probably be easier. Dana could make a call.
Can he not get a flight down to Tijuana and just like stroll across the border? Is that not what's going on these days?
Don't start now. But yeah, like so. But Bilal then said so. Dana White said 3 people were offered Leon Edwards, and they all. Not that they turned him down, but it didn't happen. And then Bilal said that he wasn't offered it. So, like, who were they offering this fight to if it's not Bilal? I think it's mad. What about this whole Conor situation? We'll end it on this. Dana White's been asked now twice about why isn't Conor McGregor getting a date, and he goes, Conor McGregor's really rich.
Oh, we want to see him in camp first. It's like that's not Dana. That's not how camps work. You don't get in camp and then hope to get a fight. You get a fight and then you go into camp. It's like,
this is bizarre.
He seems to be just making excuses and he seems to just be kind of playing dumb every time. It's like, oh, what are you talking about? No. It's very odd.
I think
as we
Conor,
said a couple of weeks ago, I think like. The fact that he only has 2 fights left on his deal, apparently, and this TV deal is coming up for renegotiation. They don't want, any kind of rumblings or problems about, maybe not having Conor there or having him go to a rival or do his own thing, or they don't want any options out there. They want to have Conor locked down when they do this TV negotiation for this TV deal. That makes sense. So I don't know about that. Like that makes a little bit of sense, but. Fighters they have a small window to do this thing, and Conor McGregor is the biggest star they've ever had, and I think Conor is a guy who loves the UFC, and if they gave him a decent offer, like nothing crazy, he would re-sign. So I think there might be something else going on that we don't know about as well. It's really hard to know why they're icing him here because I think if he was offered a fight at any date in the summer, any date in the autumn or the fall, as Dana White said, he would take it. I think Dana White's pretending that it's some kind of, I don't know what's going on. You better ask him. He's rich. He's this. He's that. He's got other things going on. I want to see him in camp. It just seems like a laundry list of excuses, and the excuse keeps changing interview to interview with Dana. So. Something strange going on anyway. Yeah,
I feel like Conor needs to talk about this now. I think this has been let go too far. And I think he needs to come out and I'm available.
Well, I think he did before. He came out and he went during the pandemic and all that stuff, and he put out messages between him and Dana showing that what he was saying was true, and it didn't seem to really help. So I don't know what the move is.
It's crazy. This is a. Like for the biggest star in the history of the sport to be treated like that, it's if Conor didn't want to fight, or if he had the movie obligations coming up or whatever. No, fair enough. I don't think anyone would, no one's going to force him to fight or anything like that. But he has said it multiple times now. He said it to Mike Bond there a couple of weeks ago that I just want a day now. I want to get back. I'm being held from my occupation or whatever. Like, he's been very strong on it multiple times now. And then he's like, oh, Conor will tell us when he wants to fight. Conor's told you he wants to fight. Like, why is he not getting a fight? What's Michael Chandler doing just sitting around there? It's all very bizarre. Like, it's all very bizarre. And I've been saying it about this.
Like, it would be bizarre enough if it was
months.
just Conor being nice, but having Mike Chandler kind of sitting there for the last, like, you know, going on a couple of years now is even more odd. And he seems to be in the mind that, oh, this is going to get, you know, sorted out any minute now. And it's been dragging on and on and on. And he's sitting around when he could be making money. He could be in big fights. He could be, you know, he's not getting any younger either. Like, you know, his career window is closing as well. And it's just a very bizarre situation. And, you know, if a TV deal gets signed and then all of a sudden we see the fight booked, or we see Conor booked for someone else, then, you know, it'll lead us to believe that maybe that was it. But if it's not that, then, you know, I don't know, there's something
fishy going on.
Yeah, something fishy going on. I don't know what Dana White and the UFC's brass reasoning is, but it goes against kind of all standard logic, I think.
Indeed, it does. All right, we will leave it there. That's the end of the podcast. Video was good, Graham. I didn't think it changed the podcast that much. I think we were just normal. I think it was very good. But yeah, let us know, lads. Let us know if you like it, and we might continue to do it. But to end the podcast, we'll just tell everyone, please follow us on social media. I am at ChonChinBA. Graham's at SevereMMA, at SevereMMA Pod on Twitter as well, and at SevereMMA.com on Instagram. If you haven't got the Patreon already, please do head on over there, patreon.com/SevereMMA Podcast. You will find it there. It's only $5 a month plus VAT, and we have podcasts every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Most Fridays. So yeah, go over there and do that, please. Thank you very much. Graham, sign us out here with your quote for the week.
And you can shoot me and you can throw me off a train. I still maintain life is a pigsty.
See you next Tuesday.